Hello and welcome to Moneyline MMA coverage of UFC 284, featuring your bout between Islam Makhachev and Alex Volkanovski, coming up a division to try and be a two-belt holder. These fights, will all take place in Perth, Australia. Will be Saturday our time. The main card starts at 9 p.m. I believe they're about 15 hours ahead or 17 hours ahead, excuse me. So that's about like 2 in the afternoon on Sunday on their time. But regardless, for us, it'll still be the normal Saturday evening, 9 p.m. main card start. And I believe the 6 p.m. prelims start. But that being said, we're going to continue this week going at you with our weight pick system in terms of having our most confident picks being the 5 weight and our least confident picks being the 1 weight. Now, of course, we pick each of the fights in the main event, but we're giving a confidence just to add a little extra twist to it to give you guys an idea of who we're more or less confident in, even further than just giving a pick. So that being said, we're going to start, as usual, with my 5 weight pick, which this week, Jose, is going to be Islam Makhachev. So this week we're starting off with the main event right away, no dancing around it. And Jose, what do you have for a weight on the main event?
So yeah, for the main event, who I have taking this is actually Alexander Volkanovski, but I have Alexander Volkanovski at my 2 weight. So yeah, because he is a great featherweight champ, but we have not really seen him against top level lightweight UFC fighters, and that's the only thing that kind of worries me. But I think he's just a really good, well rounded fighter, and I think his grappling defense, as he showed against like Brian Ortega, is extremely strong. He couldn't get submitted by Brian Ortega, and then his striking holds up with the best, like Max Holloway's. So I think Alexander Volkanovski. I saw like some footage of him being next to Islam Makhachev, and he doesn't look. I mean, realistically, he just looks shorter. But other than that, they both look, about the same size. He looks really thick. So and he just sounds really confident going into Islam, man. He's ready to be put on his back. So he looks like he's doing the right things training wise to defeat Islam. So you know, Alexander Volkanovski reminds me of like GSP. So I think this could be, one of those fights that could really cement Alexander Volkanovski being one of the greatest of all time.
Yeah, and we got right now Makachev at minus 430. I believe the heaviest favorite on the entire main card or the UFC main event card right now. Um, Alex Volkanovski, the underdog, plus 300. So that's pretty significant if you ask me. And showing that the current lightweight champion will be able to retain that belt. And Jose, I get what you're saying, man. I have a lot of respect for Volkanovski. He's clearly shown in his fights against, um, in his fights to defend the belt, is what I'm trying to say. Obviously, the multiple fights against Max Holloway. And that's a big dude, right? Max Holloway's, I would say, a pretty big guy for the featherweight division. So it's been proven that Volkanovski can fight guys and contend, but I think there's a big difference here with Makhachev, and I think there's just so clear that no matter, yeah, I get that Ortega wasn't able to submit Volkanovski, but we all saw how close he truly was, and I don't think Makhachev lets that opportunity slip, man. I think Makhachev is going to get a takedown or 2 or 3 if he wants, and he might not even have to get 3 because he's going to get him down on that first takedown, and it's going to be fight over if he gets him in the choke. So I don't know, man. I'm pretty safe in saying no matter how much practice Volkanovski wants to do, and I'm sure all week he's going to hype up the fact that he's been training on his back, but I don't think there's a man on the planet that can train you to be ready for someone that you can't replicate. Because if for what we're hearing is accurate, even Khabib had trouble beating Islam. So how are you going to find a training partner to get you? You know what I'm saying? It's like playing against, like, I hate to bring other sports in it, but it's like Lamar Jackson or something. How do you train against playing Lamar Jackson when you can't just have another you got to put like a running back at quarterback, so it's just one of those things that I don't expect Volkanovski. I think the true power is going to be seen once he steps in the ring.
No, yeah, I mean, I totally understand what you're saying, Nick. I do think Islam is definitely by far going to be the toughest challenge of Alexander Volkanovski's career. But that being said, Islam has been knocked out in the UFC. That's where his one loss on his record comes from, was from one knockout. And Alexander Volkanovski, he's a finisher. He has 12 knockout wins on his record. While Islam, yeah, he's obviously the better grappler. He's got 11 submissions, but again, I truly believe that Volkanovski has good grappling defense. He certainly has good takedown defense. He has a 73% takedown percentage rate in defense, and not to mention, I think on the feet, I think Alexander Volkanovski, I think he's going to dominate on the feet. Islam is a good striker, but I think Alexander Volkanovski is even a better striker. He actually does have a 1 inch reach advantage over Islam, and he throws almost 7 significant strikes per minute compared to Islam's 2.37. So Alexander Volkanovski, he throws a high volume of punches, and he has power to back up those punches. So I honestly do think that Volkanovski, he could possibly even win, finishing Islam via KO or TKO. To be honest, that's just how much I truly believe that Volkanovski is the great.
Yeah, I hear you, man, and I definitely respect Volkanovski a lot, but in the end, it's my 5 weight, man. And you mentioned Volkanovski's your 2 weight, so you still have some confidence, but I'm going to be definitely putting a pretty sizable bet on Makhachev, and he will be in my parlays, and that's just going to be something that I think I can rely on. I think Volkanovski's going to do exactly what he's talking about in terms of bringing the pressure, and that's fine. I don't expect him to be able to outwork Makhachev in this case, and I think that's really I don't know, man. I get Volkanovski's got that striking advantage. I'd say it definitely the striking advantage. I just don't see a knockout. Maybe I'm crazy, man. I get Makhachev has been knocked out that one time, but I'm not seeing that happen here in this fight. I'm just I'm leaning on Makhachev. I think pretty heavy here.
No, yeah, I hear you, Nick. So for that one, yeah, we differ, and yeah. So you got Islam as
Yep.
your 5 weight, and I got Alexander Volkanovski as my 2 weight, and I'm moving on to like my 5 weight. This one is Alonzo. Well, for my
Yep.
5 weight, I'm sorry, I got Alonzo Menifield, uh, taking the win over Jimmy Crute. Right now, Alonzo Menifield, he is the betting underdog at plus 176, while Jimmy Crute is the betting favorite at minus 230. This is kind of crazy, Nick, because Alonzo Menifield right now is actually coming off a 2-fight win streak, while Jimmy Crute is actually coming off a 2-fight losing streak, and he's been finishing the first round his last 2 fights to Anthony Smith and Jamal Hill. So these are, big names to lose to, one of them being the current champ now. But I'm actually curious to see what you have this fight weighed at.
Mine is, I agree with you on Menifield. I have my 2 weight on him, so not quite as confident, but I agree, man. I think Jimmy Crute is definitely going to look to grapple. I think in his more recent fights, he's been knocked out. He's been, as you mentioned, kind of struggling as of late. And at this point, I don't expect him to be willing to stand with a guy like Alonzo Menifield, who's been pretty impressive lately, man. I think his wins, I guess, mostly against Askar Mazarov, those are pretty impressive. Jimmy Crute's just not been able to put it together as of late. Ola Jacek and Sam Alvey, I guess, he did beat Paul Craig. That's a common win for both of these guys, is Paul Craig. So I'm not sure how much that matters, but I don't know, man. It is really fascinating to see the line on this fight being Jimmy Crute. And what's fascinating is it's moved a little bit in Menifield's favor. He was a bigger underdog earlier this week. I definitely had a line on him at least at plus 186. I think he was even up to plus 200 in some markets. So it's just fascinating to see the fluctuation there, but there is money coming back on Menifield, and I think it'd be a good spot to bet him as quick as you can, because by the time Saturday rolls around, man, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if was closer to plus 150, plus 140. It's going to slowly creep to even, man. I honestly don't see a crazy amount of momentum or really anything going in Jimmy Crute's favor to be such a favorite.
Yeah, no, I definitely hear you. The one thing that I see too is like he hasn't fought at all in 2022. So I want to see how taking that time off is going to affect him. I mean, he's only 26 years old too, which is really impressive. Menifield being 35. Menifield is a force to be reckoned with, but I think one thing we can definitely expect is both guys are going to be throwing a high volume punches. Both throw. Jimmy Crute throws 4.33 significant strikes per minute, while Alonzo Menifield throws 3.91. Both guys have finishing power. Jimmy Crute, like you mentioned, is the better grappler, but Alonzo Menifield, he actually has really good takedown defense. He has an 85% takedown defense percentage rate. So I think that a lot of this fight may take against the cage, both pushing each other, trying to impose their will, and just letting the hands go. And yeah, I think right now seeing Alonzo Menifield being a betting underdog, I think is a great opportunity to jump on. So, like you said, I think as the week goes on, the money lines I think going to close. The gap's going to close a bit more.
For sure, man. So we definitely agree on that, and I'm glad you bring up the takedown defense. That's one thing I definitely wanted to cover as well. Menifield hasn't fought necessarily a crazy amount of heavy grapplers. The common opponent, Paul Craig, could be included as one of those grapplers, but they've both beat him. And in fact, Jimmy Crute choked him out. So clearly, Jimmy Crute showed that he's a better jiu-jitsu kind of able to get the submission on Paul Craig. So I don't know how much that really matters getting the win for both of them. But Alonzo did lose to OSP via knockout. OSP is one of those kind of guys who's got some knockouts and a bunch of submissions on his record as well. So it's interesting to see how these guys fare against previous opponents regarding their strengths and weaknesses. But in this specific matchup, man, I don't think Crute is going to have what it takes in the end. I agree that Menifield should be able to stuff the takedowns enough to use his striking advantage, and I would also likely lean on an over. I don't know, man. I'm gonna have a different. I'm gonna have a different fight where I have more confident on the over or under, but in this fight specifically, I would rather just take the money line on Menifield. But that being said, oh, did you have any?
No,
Did you have any other points?
no, actually, Nick, I was actually going to get ready to wrap up for the
Yep.
next
So
fight.
sounds good, man. So we're on the same page. The next fight then would have been, or will be, excuse me, my four weight, and that's going to be the fight that's going to come after the one we just discussed, Jimmy Crute versus Menifield, and after that, it's going to be the one heavyweight fight on this card. Yes, a guy that may be a surprise to some of you. I am going to be picking Parker Porter for my four weight. Jose, this is a situation where it's not as much as I'm upgrading Parker Porter, as it's me downgrading Justin Tafa. I'm just not impressed with what I've seen lately out of him. Sure he beat Harry Hunsucker via knockout, but he's had a couple of fights canceled, and I'm so unimpressed by his decision loss against Jared Vanderaa. It's just a guy who I'm really not that scared of, man. Parker Porter has been KO'd in his UFC career by Chris Stackhouse back in 2020. So it's not impossible to KO the man, but it was. I think Stackhouse is a pretty good fighter. He's nothing like crazy, but I'd say much better than Justin Tafa. And I think Justin Tafa's main, I'm curious to see what you think, but in my opinion, it seemed like Justin Tafa's main strength was the power, the KO power, but he's not really necessarily going to get a decision win. I'm not even sure he has a decision win on his career. So, Jose, what do you have this fight picked at?
No, that's yeah, thank you for bringing all that up about Justin Tafa, because I actually have Justin Tafa actually winning this one. Justin Tafa is my three weight. Reason being is he is a finisher, like you mentioned. None of his fights have actually gone to decision, and the one thing that he can rely on is his power. And Parker Porter, he did have a nice 3-fight winning streak going on. And like you mentioned, he got most recently choked out in the first round. I don't think that he's gonna have to worry about that coming from Justin Tafa whatsoever. But Parker Porter being up there at 37, and he has been knocked out 3 times. And as you mentioned, it's been a while since he got last knocked out back in 2020 when he got TKO'd. But I think Justin Tafa being the younger guy right now, he's coming off a win. I think that confidence and him being younger, I think he's just gonna do what he does and press forward. And I do think Parker Porter just being a little more up in age. I kind of question his chin, so that's why I can see Justin Tafa finishing Parker Porter. Parker Porter, he does throw more strikes per minute than Justin Tafa, but Justin Tafa for a heavyweight, he throws about 5 per minute, which is still, I think, for a heavyweight, not bad, I guess, but not the best, but that's not nothing like we see from the other guys, like around the average of 3. So for this one, I'm going to go with the younger guy, Justin Tafa, with my 3.
Okay, so you still have some relative confidence in Tafa, and look, man, I get it. I think Tafa, even if he takes a loss here, I'm curious to see what the UFC does, because he's not necessarily terrible. I'm not sure he's worth cutting. I'm not going to sit here and ride a train of saying that these guys are awful. I mean, this is definitely a lower end heavyweight matchup. There's no talking them up like they're top contenders or anything like that, but I think it could go either way, but this is the fight where I was talking about earlier that I also have a pick on the rounds. So what I'm gonna say on top of, because I'm pretty confident, my 4 weights in Parker Porter, so I'm pretty confident he's gonna win. But on top of that, I say to parlay over 2.5. I think, in my opinion, if you think Parker Porter's going to win this fight, it's going to be by decision. If you think Justin Tafa is going to win this fight, you kind of have to bet under 2.5. I just don't know if I see Tafa winning this by decision. So that's kind of just some insight on there to get some extra winnings just based on what's most likely to happen. I mean, Parker Porter has multiple decision wins on his career. In fact, the 3-win streak he had before losing to Jason Almeida was all by decision. So I think that's pretty likely to say that if you're going to agree with me, you bet over 2.5. If you agree with Jose, you bet under 2.5.
Yeah. So yeah, for that one, there you have it. Both Nick and I, this is one where we disagree on. I have just Tafa. He's in my sweet spot in the middle. But yeah, then now moving on to the next fight, that goes on to my 4th weight. And for my 4th weight, I have Jack Della Maddelena. And I have him. Right now he is the betting favorite at -370, while Randy Brown is the betting underdog at +265. Jack Della Maddelena, he's a big betting favorite in this matchup. What for this matchup? What do you have this weighted at,
Look,
Nick?
man, as we discuss this more and more, I almost want to flip them live, just because like that also gives some of the viewers an idea of how, like, throughout the week, that's why it's important to follow us on Twitter and whatnot, just because you can get our final picks. Things can change, and just as we're discussing this, man, I think right now I have this fight weighted at 3, and I agree with you on Maddelena. I'm not thinking about switching my pick on Maddelena. It's more or less the weight here. I think Maddelena, I'm a little less confident as I look here. Dude, Randy Brown is on a 4-fight win streak right now. I think a couple of those fights, the one against Chaos Williams, that was a split decision. That was a really close fight. But otherwise, man, Rude Boy has been really impressive, man. This is by far going to be Maddalena's biggest challenge. So the main thing I mean there when I say considering switching is just switching the weights and putting Menifield as my 3-weight, and then switching Maddalena to my 2-weight, and just moving him down a notch a little bit, just because I think Rude Boy is a really tough challenge, man.
No, I actually I hear you, man. Like, yeah, like you mentioned, Randy Brown right now being on his own fight winning streak, and looking at the reach advantage, he has a 5-inch reach advantage over Jack Della Maddalena, and he's also a bit taller. Jack being 5'11" and Randy Brown being 6'3". But Jack Della Maddelena, he's a finisher, man. His last three fights in the UFC have been TKOs in the first round. So he is a finisher. While Randy Brown, on the other hand, as of lately, his last three fights have come by decision, and one of them being split decision. So I do think that Randy Brown, he's really good, dangerous threat, and he has all this. He has all the assets, physically and technically, to win this one. But Jack Della Maddalena, I think just no matter whose opponent is, he's always been the type of guy to come forward and just impose his will. For that being said, I mean, there's no question why I think he's just a huge favorite. I don't know why he's that big of a favorite. I don't think he should be, but I do think he should be the favorite, but just not by this
Sure.
much. Um, but yeah. So like, but that being said, I'm sure later down the road, there's people will probably hop on more for Randy Brown because there's definitely a lot of value for Randy Brown being the
Yeah,
underdog.
I definitely, and I'm a big fan. Like, this is a fight, man, that I had a lot of difficulty picking as I was looking into this one, man, because I'm a big Randy Brown fan. He's so big for the division, and I feel like he really uses that well. But he also can get cocky at times too if he's doing well. He kind of drops his guard a little bit. In stuff like that, I mean, the little things like that are just a little bit like, do I want my money to be on the line in that situation? And I do really think that Maddelena has a lot of potential. He's going to be bringing it no matter what. Even if he loses the fight, he's going to be bringing it. And I think it'd be worthwhile to have your money on that, just considering like how hard he's going to try, and you can have that guarantee that it's going to be at least, I'd say, a 55% chance. So Madalena is definitely the pick, and I think you bring up a good point. You know, Randy Brown probably has a slight jujitsu advantage, but I'm not sure that's going to become a factor unless someone gets a knockdown or something like that happens. Because I don't see either of these guys shooting for a takedown. But either way, man, I'm excited to see this. I don't think it's going to go to decision. We'll see, but I don't think it will.
Yeah, man, I definitely hear you on that. These guys, both of them, especially Jack Della Maddalena, a finisher. But again, Randy Brown, just him being such physically like bigger than Jack Della Maddalena and just legit threat. We could see the first like KO, I guess, of Jack Della Maddalena in the UFC. So it's a tough one. Yeah, like he's my fourth way right now, but yeah, as you mentioned, like this maybe makes me want to move him and place with someone else. But I honestly don't know if I can give up Justin Tafa at 3, Alex Volk at 2, and who my number 1 is. So this is a tough one. Yeah, this is a tough one. But I think, yeah, Jack Della, just he's such a big favorite, and his winning streak. I think based off everyone else how I have them ranked, I have nowhere else to put them but at my 4.
Sure. I hear you, man. I hear you. Well, in that case, we agree then, and either either way you look at it for me, 2 or 3 weight, I'm still pretty confident Madalena will get this done, but it'll be a little bit nerve wracking. You know, the fact that you did mention like he shouldn't be quite as heavy as minus 350, I definitely agree. This is one where I would wait and hope some people come in on Randy Brown and even it out a little bit. But we'll see, man. We'll see. I don't know what's going to happen come Saturday. That's one I would wait on though, because minus 350 is a lot for a guy that has this little experience that I think Madalena does. But it's, I guess, Randy Brown's 20 fights isn't anything crazy either. But regardless, moving on to the co-main event, that'll be the last fight on our books here, and interestingly enough, Jose and I both are whittled down to our one weights here. But it looks like we're going to have the co-main event with the featherweight belt that Volkanovski is the person I'm looking for. Volkanovski obviously is trying to get 2 belts. In the meantime, the UFC says, you know what? We need to give an interim belt to somebody. So they're putting up Josh Emmett versus Yair Rodriguez, and we're going to see who we've got picked here. My one weight will be on Josh Emmett, and obviously I'm not as confident as I am in some of my other picks here. It was hard. I think Yair clearly has the size advantage here, and that's one thing in looking at this fight that makes me a little nervous. But in the end, I'm not as the main things I'm looking at here for my pick on Josh Emmett is that Yair to me has gotten unimpressive wins as of late, in my opinion. His win against Ortega, it may go down in the UFC books as a KO, but that was an Ortega shoulder injury, some weird nonsense. I'm not sure he was truly going to win that fight. Um, lost to Max Holloway. I haven't seen enough out of Rodriguez. Josh Emmett's fought Calvin Kattar and some other guys. Calvin Cater's the same size as Yair Rodriguez. So Jose, before I don't want to ramble on too much here, before I let you give your pick here, Yair Rodriguez is minus 166 favorite here to win the interim belt. Josh Emmett is plus 130. Jose, what do you have here?
Yeah, so I'm actually, I'm actually surprised to see Yair Rodriguez be the betting favorite in this one, just because I think Josh Emmett is just more well known to be just a vicious uh, knockout artist. So he's more just a finisher than Yair Rodriguez, and as you mentioned, Yair Rodriguez has not had impressive wins as of lately. But that being said, I have Yair Rodriguez being my number one weight because I think it's just almost time due, but there is some question marks on that. For example, like you mentioned, that Brian Ortega TKO stoppage, that Mac, and then before that, he went the distance with Max Holloway, losing unanimous decision. And Max Holloway, I think, definitely did get the best of Yair Rodriguez in the striking department in that matchup. But Yair Rodriguez, he's always has that dog in him. He always has to continue the fights, and he's tough to get knocked out. I mean, he went to unanimous decision and beat Jeremy Stephens, while Josh Emmett himself got knocked out in the third round by Jeremy Stephens, pretty brutally too. So, and before that, Yair Rodriguez, he had a tight fight with the Korean Zombie, and then last minute, like a last Hail Mary, um, you know, almost luck elbow, knocking out the Korean Zombie. But that just shows how Yair Rodriguez is got that fighting spirit, and he just doesn't give up, and he throws flashy things when you least expect it. He reminds me a lot of like a young Anthony Pettis. But Yair Rodriguez time is coming, and I just think his inactivity, his lack of like not really being as productive as like Max Holloway and Volkanovski is just where I'm kind of worried about. I think Josh Emmett has been pretty active, a lot more active than Yair Rodriguez as of lately. So that is what worries me. But yeah, I have Yair Rodriguez winning. The size advantage I do like, and the fact that he's actually hard to knock out. So I think this matchup should play in Yair Rodriguez's favor. But again, Josh Emmett is such a dangerous threat. That's why I have Yair Rodriguez as my number one.
Yeah, so neither of us are necessarily like super convinced, but we will disagree on that one. I'm definitely Emmett will be on some of my bets for this week just because I think he's proven that he can deal with some guys that have maybe more height and reach than him. But Emmett, it's almost like looking at Michael Chandler in some of those lightweight fights where he may be a smaller guy, but he's stocky and he's got the power and he will just be down to swing. And there has been times where Emmett, yeah, he got KO'd by Jeremy Stephens and he didn't look so great, but also kind of getting back into the territory where, that's going to be 5 years ago or almost like 5 years ago to the week on Saturday when this fight occurs. So I think we're going to be seeing a much more experienced and ready to go Josh Emmett. He is 37, so this could be one of his last, like, you know what I'm saying, hoorah, like I need to make a real push here now or it's going to be it for me. So we'll see if he can really bring it here and get a good final run going and continue his win streak. Or if Jose will be correct and Yair Rodriguez will tough one out here because he is a really tough guy to put out, and he's a guy that I respect a lot, and I think will continue to be a contender no matter what happens in this fight because he's got a lot of fighting to come. So either way, guys, that covers all of the 5 fights on the main card here for UFC 284. we're pretty excited to see here. There was a couple of canceled fights. I think Paulo Costa was at one point listed for this card, Jose, but it is what it is. Can't always get these guys in here for all the fights that are initially planned. Obviously, the UFC's got some crazy stuff planned coming up with John Jones returning and some insane fights coming down the pipeline later this year. But either way, those are our main picks. And definitely, as always, follow us on Twitter at Moneyline MMA to get our picks on Saturday before the fight. And let us know in the comments below who you guys are going to be betting on this week. Have a great week.